The desert was silent under two burning suns. The air shimmered like fire, and the wind carried a dry smell of dust and old pain. The colony called Rether Dunes was a place where weak people disappeared, and strong people pretended not to see anything on this harsh ground. An alien girl named Scylla was buried up to her neck in the yellow sand. Only her head was above the surface. Her skin pale, her lips cracked, and her eyes full of fear and shame. The sand around her was hot enough to burn, but she could not move even an inch. Her clan had left her here as punishment. They believed she was unfit to breed, a failed body, a waste. So they buried her under the open sky and walked away. Scylla tried to call for help earlier, but no one came. Villagers had passed by, looking at her with disgust. Some had laughed. Some had murmured old words like cursed, broken, useless. Scylla stayed quiet, because screaming would only make her throat bleed. Hours passed, the suns climbed higher, and her hope almost died each time she took a breath. She felt sand slide down her neck. She wondered if this was really how her life was going to end. Buried like trash, forgotten like dust. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Please." Someone. Far away, a lonely cargo rover hummed across the dunes. The driver was a human man named Jared Hall, a widowed father who worked as a supply runner across the empty desert. He had lost his wife years ago, and after that, he avoided people. He lived in a quiet outpost with his young son Evan. Jared rarely stopped for anyone, but today something pulled his attention. He noticed something strange in the sand, a small dark shape that did not belong with the dunes. At first, he thought it was debris from an old crash. But when he moved closer, he saw a pair of eyes staring back at him. Weak eyes, tired eyes, begging eyes. Jared hit the brakes hard, dust rising behind the rover. He jumped down and ran toward her. Scylla lifted her head a little and whispered, "Please, don't leave me." Jared knelt beside her, brushing sand away from her face. Her skin was burning hot from the suns, and she looked moments away from passing out. "What happened to you?" Jared asked softly. She moved her lips, but no words came out. Her throat was too dry to speak. A few villagers standing far away shouted, "Human! Stay away from her. She is cursed. She is unfit for breeding. She must finish the punishment." Jared stared at them with disbelief. "You buried her," he said. "She will die. That is the point," one man replied. "She is a burden to the clan," another added. Jared felt anger rise inside him, a deep anger he had not felt in years. He turned back to Scylla, his voice gentle again. "I'm getting you out," he said. He pushed his hands into the sand and started digging around her shoulders. The sand was hot and heavy, burning his fingers, but he did not stop. Scylla watched him with wide eyes, confused why a human, a stranger, cared. "I don't deserve help," she whispered, her voice like a fading breath. Jared looked at her and shook his head. "No one deserves to die like this," he said. "You are not a thing for them to throw away." As he dug, the wind began to change. A sharp whistle echoed across the dunes. Scylla's eyes widened with panic. "A sandstorm," she whispered. Jared looked up, and his heart dropped. A wall of dark brown dust was rising on the horizon, moving fast toward them. The sky darkened as the storm stretched across the land like a monster made of sand and wind. If it reached them, both of them could get buried alive. There was no time. Jared worked faster, his arms burning, sweat running down his face. He freed her chest, then her waist, then grabbed her under the arms and pulled with all his strength. Scylla gasped as her legs came free from the sand. Her body was weak, shaking, and almost weightless. Jared lifted her into his arms and carried her toward the rover. The villagers watched in silence, confused and afraid of the human's baldness. One of them muttered, "He will bring trouble to himself." Another said, "Let him handle it. The storm will take them both." But Jared did not care about their words. He opened the rover door, placed Scylla inside, and turned on the engine. "You're safe now," he said. Scylla looked at him, tears forming in her eyes. "No, they will come," she whispered. "They don't allow anyone to save us." Before Jared could ask what she meant, the storm roared louder, wind smashed against the rover. Sand hit the windows like bullets. Jared gripped the steering controls. "Hold on," he said. "We're getting out of here." As the rover pushed through the rising storm, Scylla closed her eyes and prayed that this time someone would truly save her. And outside, through the swirling sand, unknown shapes began to follow them on hover bikes, their lights glowing like silent predators in the storm. The real danger had just begun. The desert storm hit the rover like a giant fist. The metal frame shook, and sand slapped the windows again and again. Jared held the controls tight, fighting the wind as the rover crawled forward through the angry storm. Scylla sat beside him, wrapped in a thin blanket, trembling from cold, heat, and fear all at the same time. Her voice was weak, but her eyes kept drifting to the back window, as if she expected someone to appear from the darkness. Jared kept glancing at her, trying to understand her fear. "You're safe now," he said in a steady voice. Though he himself wasn't sure if that was true, Scylla shook her head slowly. "No, they never let anyone leave. Not after someone breaks the old law." "What old law?" Jared asked, raising his voice over the roaring storm. "The rule that women with weak bodies must be buried," she whispered. "And those who save them must be punished too." Jared felt a cold chill, something deeper than the storm outside. "So they want you dead," he said. Scylla swallowed painfully. "And they want the one who saves me dead too." The wind howled harder, pushing the rover sideways. Jared forced the machine straight, but the storm was too powerful. He looked at Scylla and said, "We just need to reach my home." She nodded weakly, trusting him even while fear shook her heart. Minutes passed, but every second felt long. The storm grew thicker, turning day into a dark haze. Jared switched on the external lights, cutting through the dust like thin white swords. But then he saw something in the reflection of the side mirror. A faint red glow moving fast, then another, and another. Hoverbikes, at least 3. Shapes dancing inside the storm, following them like hunters chasing a wounded animal. Scylla saw the same glow and grabbed the seat with shaking fingers. "They found us," she whispered. "They always find us." Jared pressed harder on the controls, pushing the rover to its limit. The engine groaned under the pressure. The hoverbikes came closer, their lights cutting through the sand. Jared could hear their engines now, a low humming that sounded like whispers inside the storm. One rider moved to the left side of the rover, trying to get close. Another moved behind. A third appeared on the right. Scylla's breathing became fast and short. "They will hurt you," she said. "They will take me back. Please, stop the rover and let me go." "They will spare you." Jared turned to her, his eyes sharp. "I'm not leaving you," he said, his voice deep and firm. "You don't know what they do," Scylla cried, tears forming. "I don't care," Jared replied. "You deserve to live." Suddenly, a hoverbike rammed the back of the rover, shaking it so hard, Scylla almost fell from the seat. Jared cursed under his breath and tightened his grip. The storm made everything worse, blinding him, blinding them, turning the chase into chaos. The rider on the left pulled closer, raising a shock rod. It crackled with blue electricity. "Ready to strike," Scylla gasped, covering her head with her arms. But the wind shifted. throwing heavy sand between them and the rider's strike missed. Jared took the chance and swerved the rover to the right. Slamming the side of the machine into the rider's hoverbike, the bike spun, lost control, and vanished into the storm, swallowed by dust. The other two riders grew more aggressive. Pushing closer, trying to stop the rover, Scylla whispered, "They will not stop. Not until I am dead." Jared shook his head. "As long as I breathe, they're not getting you." Another hit from behind, harder this time. The rover's alarm flashed red inside the control panel, engine strain, suspension damage. But still moving, barely, the storm thickened again, making the light inside the rover flicker. Jared leaned forward, trying to see the path ahead. Only sand, only darkness, only danger everywhere. Scylla's voice came out like a broken whisper. "If they catch us, they will bury me again." Deeper this time. Jared looked at her with a fierce expression. "Not happening," he said. A loud crash echoed behind them. The last rider on the right misjudged the wind and collided with the second bike. Both bikes spun wildly and disappeared into the storm. Only their fading engine noise remained, swallowed by wind and dust. Scylla stared at Jared with disbelief. "You fought them." "Just for me," she said softly. Jared exhaled, his body shaking from tension and adrenaline. "No one deserves what they tried to do to you," he said. The storm began to calm a little now, the wind slowing and the sky becoming lighter. Jared checked the scanner. They were 20 minutes away from his home. Scylla leaned back in the seat, her eyes half closed, exhaustion pulling her down. "You risked your life," she whispered again. Jared looked forward, his voice low. "I couldn't watch someone die in front of me." Scylla gazed at him with soft eyes. No one had ever protected her. No one had ever defied her clan for her. No one had ever carried her from death. The rover moved slowly out of the dying storm, and the landscape became clear again. Jared let out a long breath of relief. "We made it," he said. Scylla closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time in her life, she felt a small touch of hope, but far behind them. Hidden in the last tail of the storm, a tall shadow stood on a heavy hover bike. He watched the rover escape, his red visor glowing with anger. He whispered into his com, "Prepare the others." The girl must be returned. The danger was not over. It was only beginning. The storm faded behind them as the rover rolled into a quiet stretch of desert, the sky turning soft and orange under the setting suns. Jared felt his heartbeat slowing, but the tension in his shoulders stayed hard like stone. He kept glancing at the mirror to make sure no more riders were following. Scylla sat beside him, weak, leaning against the seat, her fingers still trembling from fear and exhaustion. A small outpost appeared in the distance, built from metal scraps and strong wooden beams. It stood alone, surrounded by nothing but sand and rock. A tiny home in a giant desert. As the rover approached, Scylla whispered, "Is this your place?" Jared nodded. "Home," he said, "not fancy, but safe." When he stopped the rover, a small boy ran out from the doorway. He was around 8 years old, with messy hair, bright brown eyes, and a small tool belt around his waist. "Dad," he shouted. "You're back." Then he stopped suddenly when he saw Scylla inside the rover. His eyes grew wide with surprise and a little fear. "Dad." "Who is she?" Jared lifted Scylla gently in his arms. "This is Scylla," he said. "She needs help." The boy nodded slowly, staring at her with curiosity. "My name is Evan," he said softly. "Are you hurt?" Scylla tried to smile, but her lips shook. She whispered, I don't want to cause trouble." Jared shook his head. "You are not trouble," he said firmly. Then he carried her inside the outpost, where the air was cooler and cleaner. Inside, The house was simple but warm. A small kitchen, a workshop corner full of tools, 2 beds and shelves with metal spare parts everywhere. Jared placed Scylla on the old couch and covered her with a clean blanket. Evan brought her a cup of cool water with both hands, trying not to spill. "Here," he said kindly. Scylla took the cup, her hands shaking. "Thank you, little one," she whispered after she drank. Color slowly came back to her face. Jared knelt beside her. "You're safe here," he said. "No one will hurt you." Scylla looked at him with tired, confused eyes. "You don't even know me," she said. Jared replied gently, "I don't need to know you to help you." Evan sat on the floor and watched Scylla quietly. He had not seen many aliens before, but something about her made him feel protective. He asked, "Why were you in the sand?" Scylla lowered her eyes, her voice small. "My clan said I am unfit to breed," she whispered. "They said my body is weak, not good for children. So I am useless." Evan frowned. "That's stupid," he said honestly. "People are people." Scylla almost cried from those simple words. She had never heard such kindness before. Jared placed a bowl of warm broth beside her. "Eat slowly," he said. Scylla nodded and took a small sip, her hands warming around the bowl. After a few minutes, Jared sat across from her, his voice low. "Tell me everything," he said. Scylla hesitated, but something in Jared's eyes made her trust him. So she began. "My clan lives by old laws," she said. "They test every woman at age 18. She swallowed, tears forming. "If anyone fails the test, they call her broken, useless, unfit for the future." Evan whispered, "That's cruel." Scylla nodded weakly. "They buried me at dawn. They told me I would return to the soil and help the desert grow." Jared's hand turned into a fist. He remembered his wife, who died because of another cruel tradition on a different colony. He remembered how helpless he felt. He remembered how it broke him. And now, seeing Scylla suffer the same way, a fire grew inside him again. Scylla continued, "When you pulled me out, I didn't understand," she whispered. "No man from my clan would ever do that," Jared said softly. "I'm not from your clan." Suddenly, a loud beep echoed from the outside motion sensor. Evan jumped. "What was that?" he asked. Jared stood quickly and checked the small screen near the door. A red dot flashed, then disappeared. "Something moved near the fence," Jared said, his voice turning sharp. Scylla's breath caught, fear returning to her eyes. "They found us," she whispered. "They always find us." Jared locked the door and lowered the metal shutters. "No one's coming inside," he said. Scylla pressed her hand against her chest, her heart pounding fast. She felt like she was bringing danger to these 2 humans. She whispered, "I should leave?" "I am putting you in danger." Jared turned to her sharply. "You are not going anywhere," he said. "This is your home now." Evan stepped closer and held Scylla's hand. "You can stay with us," he said shyly. "We don't throw people away here." Scylla began to cry silently, tears falling onto the blanket. She had never heard such soft, warm words in her entire life. For the first time, she felt safe, even if danger waited outside. But outside the fence, hidden behind a rock, a tall shadow watched the house. His red visor glowed in the dark, and his voice came out cold through the comm device. "The girl is inside," he said. "Prepare the others. We take her back by force." Inside the home, Scylla didn't know that the worst was still coming. But she also didn't know that Jared would fight harder than any man she had ever seen. Because he had already lost one woman to cruelty, he was not going to lose another. Night came slowly over the desert, the 2 suns slipping behind the dunes and leaving the land in a deep blue shadow. Inside the small outpost, Scylla sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. her eyes flicking toward every sound outside. Jared moved around the room with tense shoulders, checking the locks, tightening metal bars. Switching security panels on, Evan stayed close to Scylla. Sitting beside her on the floor with worried eyes, the air inside felt heavy. Like a storm waiting to break, Scylla whispered. They will return. Jared looked at her calmly but firmly. Let them, he said. I won't hand you over. Scylla shook her head, fear rising inside her chest again. You don't understand their rules, she said. They believe my life belongs to the clan, not to me. Not anymore, Jared replied. You're here now. Before she could answer, the motion sensor beeped again. Louder this time. Jared checked the screen. 3 red dots moving slowly around the fence. One stopped directly in front of the main gate. Scylla's breath caught. They're here, she whispered. The outpost lights flickered for a moment as someone touched the external wires, testing the defenses. Then came a heavy knock on the metal door. Shaking the whole frame, Evan jumped in fear and grabbed Scylla's hand. Jared stepped toward the door, his jaw tense. A voice came through the metal, deep, cold, and full of authority. Human, it said. Open the door and return the girl. Scylla covered her mouth with her hand. Trembling, Jared didn't move, didn't blink. He replied loudly. She stays here. Silence. Then another knock, harder. Shaking the entire front wall. Inside, Scylla whispered, Please. Let me go. They will hurt your child. Jared turned sharply toward her. Scylla, stop, he said, his voice low and fierce. You are not going back to them. Something slammed against the door again. A weapon this time, maybe a heavy rod or a battering tool. The metal bent slightly inward. Evan started crying softly. Scylla pulled him into her arms, trying to calm him even though she shook with fear herself. Human, the voice growled from outside. This is your last warning. Return what belongs to the clan. Jared locked the final bolt, stepped back, and grabbed a metal tool from his workbench. A long wrench, heavy and strong, the closest thing he had to a weapon. He stood in front of Scylla and Evan like a wall. No one belongs to your clan, he shouted through the door. Not anymore. A loud blast shook the outpost. The door dented inward as something explosive hit it. Dust fell from the ceiling. Evan screamed and hid behind Scylla. Scylla stood up, grabbing Evan close, her heart racing like thunder. Another blast. The metal door cracked open a few inches. Through the gap, red visor lights glowed in the darkness like angry eyes. Scylla stepped backward until she hit the wall. Jared raised the wrench, refusing to give ground. The door burst open with a violent crash. 3 clan hunters stepped inside, wearing dark armor with glowing plates, their weapons humming with blue energy. They spread across the room quickly, blocking every exit. Scylla froze. Her breath stuck inside her throat. The leader pointed a long stun rod toward her. You come with us, he said, his voice cold as stone. Your burial must be completed, Scylla gasped, her knees shaking. Evan cried and held onto her clothes. Jared stepped forward. She is not going anywhere, he growled. 2 hunters moved toward Jared, raising their stun rods. The rods crackled with sharp electric light. Scylla whispered, Please. No, Jared. Don't fight them. They will kill you. Jared didn't look away from the hunters. I'm not afraid of them, he said. And you shouldn't be either. One hunter lunged forward, swinging the stun rod. Jared dodged and slammed the wrench against the hunter's armor, the hit ringing like metal on metal. The hunter stumbled, but the second one moved in fast, striking Jared's shoulder with the electric rod. Jared groaned in pain but didn't fall. He kept fighting, pushing the men away from Scylla and Evan. Scylla cried out, Stop! Please, I will go with you. Just don't hurt them." The leader moved toward her, gripping her arm tightly. Her knees bent in pain, and she almost fell. Evan shouted, "Leave her alone," hitting the hunter's leg with a small wooden toy. The hunter kicked him aside. Evan crashed into the wall with a cry. Jared's eyes burned with fury. He charged forward, hitting the hunter so hard the helmet cracked on the side. The hunter fell with a heavy thud, but the leader grabbed Scylla by the hair and pulled her toward the door. "You come with me," he said, "or the boy dies." Scylla's heart broke. She looked at Evan, curled on the floor, crying in pain. She looked at Jared, fighting to stand after the electric hit. She whispered, "I will go. Please, don't hurt them." She stepped forward, surrendering, but before the leader could drag her away, Jared pushed himself between them again, breathing hard, filled with rage. "No," he said. "She stays." The leader raised his weapon toward Evan. Scylla screamed. Jared's arm shook, but he didn't move away from the path. He shielded his son with his whole body. The leader hissed, "Then you both die tonight." Inside the tiny outpost, everything froze for one breath. Scylla's tears dropped. Evan sobbed. Jared stood strong like a wall. The fight had reached its breaking point, and the next move would decide all their lives. The moment of choice had arrived. The outpost was filled with the sound of heavy breaths, crackling weapons, and fear that squeezed every heart inside. The clan leader's glowing rod pointed straight at Evan, and the boy curled against the wall, shaking. Jared stood in front of him like a shield, his chest rising and falling fast, pain spreading through his shoulder from the earlier strike. But he did not step aside, not even 1 inch. Scylla watched with wide, terrified eyes, her hands trembling, her whole body frozen between running and collapsing. She whispered, "Please, stop. He is only a child." But the leader didn't care. His voice was cold like dry steel. "The boy is not the target," he said. "He is only a message." Jared tightened his grip on the wrench. "You won't touch him," he growled. The leader tilted his head, almost amused. "You would die for this girl?" he asked. "A girl with no value." Jared's eyes burned. "She has value," he said. "You just can't see it." The leader lunged forward, his stun rod glowing with bright blue energy. Jared blocked it with the wrench, sparks flying across the room. Pain shot through his arm, but he pushed back with all the strength he had left. The 2 other hunters recovered and moved in again, spreading out to trap Jared from both sides. Scylla felt helpless, crushed by fear. Every moment she stayed here, the danger grew. "This is my fault," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They will kill him because of me." Evan crawled closer to her, grabbing her hand. His small voice trembled. "Don't leave?" Those 2 words hit her heart like fire. She looked down at the tiny boy trusting her, and something inside her changed. For the first time in her life, someone cared if she stayed. Someone wanted her alive. Someone fought for her. She stood up slowly, her knees weak but her heart burning. "No more running," she whispered. "No more fear." The leader shoved Jared backward, making him fall to 1 knee. The hunter on the right lifted his rod to strike Jared's back. Scylla acted before she could think. She threw herself between Jared and the blow. The electric shock hit her instead, running through her body like lightning. She screamed, but stayed standing. Refusing to fall, the hunters stared in surprise. Even Jared froze. "Why would you do that?" he gasped. Scylla turned her head toward him, her voice weak but brave. "Because you fought for me," she whispered. "Now I fight for you." The leader roared in anger. "This girl is broken," he shouted. "She was supposed to die in the sand." Scylla straightened her back, even though her legs shook badly. "I am not broken," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "I am alive because of them." She pointed toward Jared and Evan. "I choose them." Her words shocked everyone. Even the hunters hesitated for a moment, unsure how to react. Jared used that moment. He stood up with a burst of strength and slammed the wrench into the leader's arm. The weapon fell from the leader's hand, clattering to the floor with a sharp echo. The leader stumbled backward, grabbing his arm in pain. The two hunters rushed forward again, but Jared was ready. He blocked one, dodged the other, and pushed him away from Scylla. Evan crawled to the fallen stun rod while no one was looking. He grabbed it with both hands, shaking from fear but determined to help. He aimed it at the nearest hunter and pressed the trigger. A bright flash burst out, hitting the hunter's leg. The hunter fell, shouting in shock. Jared saw his chance. He grabbed the second hunter by the armor plate and threw him against the wall. The heavy body hit the metal hard, sliding down in pain. Now only the leader stood, furious, humiliated, and desperate. He reached for his fallen weapon, but Scylla stepped on it with her foot, stopping him. The leader looked up at her with disbelief. "You dare defy your clan," he shouted. Scylla looked down at him with tears in her eyes and a new strength in her voice. "I was never yours to own," she said. Jared moved beside her, breathing hard. He lifted the wrench again. "This ends now," he said. The leader stared at the human and the girl standing together. He realized he was outnumbered, outmatched, and out of time. He hissed, "This is not over," and staggered toward the door. Jared grabbed him by the collar and threw him outside. "Stay away from my family," he growled. The leader crawled to his hoverbike, jumped on it, and sped into the dark desert. Disappearing into the night, inside the outpost, silence finally returned. Scylla fell to her knees, shaking from fear, shock, and pain. Jared quickly caught her, helping her sit. Evan ran to her and hugged her tightly. "Scylla," he cried, "don't go away." She held him close, tears falling onto his hair. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. Jared placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice soft. "You're safe," he said. "No one is taking you back." Scylla looked at both of them, the man who fought for her, and the child who believed in her. Her heart felt full in a way she had never known. She whispered, "I have a family now." Jared smiled gently. "Yeah," he said, "you do." As dawn broke over the desert, the first light touched the outpost. Scylla stood between Jared and Evan, watching the sunrise. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. She wasn't a burden. She wasn't unfit. She wasn't alone. She was home. She was loved. She was safe. And her new life had finally begun.